Welcome everyone to Westcliff University's Distinguished Innovator Speaker Series, and a special shout out to the whole crew at Venture Labs in Markham, Canada, Westcliff's new strategic partner as the university expands to its first international campus in Canada. I'm Dr. Barry Sandrew, Managing Director of the Innovation Hub at Westcliff, and your moderator today. I'm really happy you were able to join us this morning. Before we get to our speaker, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Westcliff University for those in our webinar audience who are not familiar with our campus. Pictured here is our campus in Irvine, California. Westcliff is an accredited private institution of higher learning with over 6,000 students enrolled both live online and on campus. There are 4 colleges at the university: College of Business, College of Education, College of Law, and the College of Technology and Engineering. Launching soon will be our College of Nursing in Corona, California. We also offer a full-stack coding bootcamp certificate and a cybersecurity bootcamp certificate. To learn more about Westcliff, including our awesome undergraduate athletic program, I invite you to visit our website at westcliff.edu, as well as Westcliff University on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, X, formerly known as Twitter, YouTube, and Red. And now for our speaker. Navid Alipour is a prominent figure in the intersection of artificial intelligence and medicine. He's founder of CureMatch, Inc., a digital health company specializing in personalized medical therapy and oncology. His decision support system assists oncologists in selecting customized cancer drug regimens based on an individual patient's molecular tumor profile. As we'll learn, no 2 cancers are alike, and there are a myriad of drug combinations for treating those cancers. How does an oncologist decide on a regimen? And is Navid's technology a significant step in that decision? Another company that he founded, CureMetrix, focuses on employing machine learning, a subset of artificial intelligence, to detect breast cancer in mammograms. His artificial intelligence algorithms can also detect microcalcifications in mammograms, which are indicators of cardiovascular disease, which is called the silent killer in women. He's also founder of an artificial intelligence-focused VC fund, Analytics Ventures. Navid Alipour's visionary leadership and commitment to leveraging artificial intelligence for personalized cancer care is having a significant impact on the field of medicine.
Very, very nice to see you all. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's amazing what you've accomplished, and I can't wait to get into it. But one of the things I wanted to let you know is that I listened to a podcast the other day, and they said in 2050, there's going to be personalized medicine because of artificial intelligence, and apparently they're not aware of what you're doing. Could you go into what you're doing? In addition to what I just said, but also how you got into it.
Sure. No, I'd be happy to do that, Barry. And I do have some slides that I can share, and I'll share my screen on and off as needed. But to give a bit of a quick background on myself, I joke that my wife and I are the black sheep of the families, and that we're not doctors. Everyone else is, though. My father's a retired cardiologist, both brothers doctors, her dad, her stepdad, her sister. I have a long business background and certainly have started some companies and have worn the investor hat. And I'd like to say that it was all masterfully planned, but it wasn't. There was some serendipity involved to how we started CureMetrix and CureMatch. Some of you may know, if you're in Southern California, UC San Diego is one of the birthplaces, one of the epicenters of artificial intelligence. And back in 2013, we had some scientists that reached out to us because we're in San Diego and they knew we're making investments in AI technologies. And this was before it was in the news every day, and software predominantly. And they said, we're these NASA data scientists and literally rocket scientists. And we have helped detect anomalies in space weather. And we said, that's fantastic. Anywhere you can make a prediction or recommendation or forecast or detect anomalies that don't belong, that's where AI comes in, and machine learning in this case of breast cancer and heart disease with CureMetrix. And so we said, what can we do in women's health? And in the interest of your listeners' time, we said, can we detect breast cancer better? And they very confidently said, yeah, we can do that. So we were the first company in history with our CM triage product to get FDA cleared with an AI-based breast cancer product. Now, we're 100% software, but it's a diagnostic. So we have to go through the FDA, of course, before we can legally sell it. We have 2 other pending FDA products that work fantastically, but we can't legally sell them until they are cleared. So our triage will do exactly that and say which batch of mammograms, nothing suspicious, look at them when you have time. Another batch, suspicious, get to them immediately. That's where Assist says exactly where the cancer is. Density is for dense tissue. It's much harder to detect breast cancer in dense tissue. And then, not to take away from breast cancer, but we found that by detecting the breast arterial calcification, which you touched upon, we could detect that, and calcification is potentially the early onsets of heart disease, which is the silent killer, as you said, of women, that 65% die without any symptoms. So by detecting the calcification in the same mammogram, it's a 2-for-1, no extra radiation, no extra discomfort, and we can then get that information to the patient earlier, who can then go to see a cardiologist and do the procedures and extra tests and blood work and whatnot to then get in front of that years before a potential cardiac event. So that's very quickly on the CureMetrix side, and it was the first company we started between these two. So I wanted to just give a quick history of how we started this first one.
Yeah. Well, now the interesting thing is that you have no hardware. This is all
Oh,
software in the cloud,
correct.
and so and this is if somebody has had a digital X-ray, a digital mammogram a year ago, you could assess that.
We could.
Yeah.
Correct. And that's the beauty of what you just shared, is that we could do this retrospectively. We could literally go and again, we're not a brick and mortar location. We're not practicing medicine. We're a traditional healthcare IT product for the imaging center and the hospitals to use to then in real time detect cancer and detect potentially calcification and heart disease from that with other procedures. But that center where our software sits on top of, so we're agnostic as to the hardware, the PACS as they call it. Is it a hologic machine, a GE machine? We're agnostic. But we could retrospectively look at mammograms from yesterday, from 6 months ago, from 3 years ago, and say, you need to get these women back in, they're walking heart attacks.
Yeah.
And by getting them to come in earlier, I mean, not only is this a huge win for women's health, but it's a huge win for the healthcare system to get in front of a potential cardiac event, where the average heart attack costs over $104,000 to treat, but to get blood work done or EKG or to get on statins, that costs nothing compared to everything that goes with from the paramedic showing up to all the procedures of a heart attack.
And in terms of detecting breast cancer, you get some very high percentages, correct?
Absolutely. Our CM density product. So again, in dense breast tissue, it's incredibly difficult to detect. And our chief medical officer, Dr. Lisa Watanabe, published a paper back late last year, I think November, that showed near perfect accuracy in detecting breast cancer in dense tissue with our CM density product.
That's amazing. Yeah, and it's very relevant today because during COVID, mammography was not considered a high priority procedure, which is so unfortunate. There's so many. Go ahead.
No, it really is. You're so spot on there, Barry. And mammography was not an essential service, and women couldn't go in to get one. Radiologists, couldn't do their work. OBGYNs couldn't prescribe it. So yeah, it was very, very unfortunate and we're seeing the ramifications. These are some of the side effects of the whole COVID period, outside of COVID itself, that, cancer diagnosis delayed, and unfortunately, we all know that it's all about early detection, which prolongs lives and saves lives.
Yeah, and the thing is that medicine has really changed since COVID. I mean, everything about medicine has changed. One of the big problems right now is the backlog of radiology and that sort of thing. And the beauty of what your system is that you could actually take a library of 100,000 mammograms, and you can actually triage them overnight, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's exactly what we do on the CM triage front, where, and I'll just very quickly go back to that slide, is that we're up to 99% sensitivity, and we could be in a rural setting, we could be in a mobile setting, and really there's a fear, of course, that some doctors have: AI is going to replace my job, and the robots are going to take over, and all this nonsense in my mind, because I think we're a long way from that. And the simple fact of the matter is, we don't have enough doctors. We don't have enough radiologists even. And maybe they're more threatened than, let's say, a cardiologist or a surgeon, which will be, one could make the argument it's going to take much, much longer for a robot or AI to take over a surgeon's job, as opposed to radiologists. But we have a shortage of radiologists in the US. And we have and it's even a bigger problem in the rest of the world. So we need technologies that will allow the doctors we have to see more patients, to be more efficient. And also, radiologists have some of the highest burnout rates amongst doctors, because they're sitting in a dark room looking at image after image, and they burn out. And are they looking at it after a lunch break? Are they distracted? Are they having a bad day? Do they not have their cup of coffee? And so to use tools like ours, it's the guardrails on the freeway, so to speak. And it allows them to take care of more patients better and more efficiently.
Yeah, and that brings up the whole issue of democratizing expertise. I mean, AI is given a bad rap for a lot of different reasons, but in terms of medicine, it really opens up the ability of a radiologist to work with underserved and remote areas, basically. Correct?
Absolutely. Not only does it democratize AI, to give the same caliber of care to the patient who might live we're in Southern California, all of us. So instead of living in Orange County, where you all are based, or San Diego, where I am, they're in, Barstow, California, or even a smaller town. And so we can give that same level of care, regardless of where the patient is. And it's also important to note, in training our algorithms, we trained on mammograms from a heterogeneous data set. So we had women from all backgrounds and ethnicities, from Caucasian to African American to Asian American to, in Brazil, we have our clearance. We had women from South America, from Japan, from Europe. So we trained on a heterogeneous data set, so that it's not all, one ethnicity or background that the AI is trained on.
Yeah, and that brought up a question I was going to ask you. We all saw the debacle of Google, what is it, Gemini,
Oh, yeah.
showing extreme bias in terms of ethnicity. How do we ensure, and I think you just basically answered it, that the AI algorithms do not carry that kind of bias against certain ethnicities?
I think it's a huge issue, and it's not something that we're just going to solve it and check the box and move on. It's something that we're going to have to be vigilant about continuously.
Yeah.
And that there's a saying that the law is always behind technology, right? Whether it's AI or it's cryptocurrency or anything else, the law is always going to be playing catch up. And as technologies come into play, then you need the laws to, protect against the bad actors, but also set guidelines, even if it's not for in a bad actor sense, so that it is truly representative of our population.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a constant vigilance on that. And at the end of the day, the capital markets speak. And if you have a technology that has not been trained on a heterogeneous data set, let's say, it's not going to perform as well. And the markets will speak to that. And competitors will take advantage of that.
Well, are there differences in the types of cancer based on ethnicity?
There's not a difference in the sense of ethnicity. There's different. So let me bifurcate this. So on the diagnostic front, even on your lung and my lung, same spot, rib cage is same spot. It's easier. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's easier to apply machine learning to lung images to detect lung cancer. Breast tissue, even the left and right tissue on the same woman is not the same. And so it's incredibly difficult. And so we chose breast cancer not because it's easy, but it's the most difficult. And so diagnosis and detection is absolutely going to come down to training the machine learning algorithms on women from all walks of life and backgrounds in ages. On the CureMatch side, now that's where unfortunately it's called pan cancer, any cancer for not just women. CureMetrix is 100% women's health focus with breast health and heart health and other modalities and as we go into it. But on CureMatch, it's for any man, woman, or child, unfortunately, that has cancer. And Dr. Rizal Kurzrock is our co-founder. They're an amazing lady, one of the top oncologists in the world. And being Canadian by birth, she always says, cancer is like a snowflake. No two snowflakes will ever look the same. No two cancers molecularly are ever the same. So why should one patient get the same treatment as the next and the next and the next just because they have lung cancer, right? And so, and I'm sharing my screen again. This is Dr. Kurzrock for those that want to look her up. And so that was the premise of CureMatch. And again, we didn't masterfully plan this and starting this second digital health company. My business partner got cancer, and the first oncologist he saw basically told him he's not going to make it past 4 years at best. But why don't you come back on Monday and we'll give you the standard of care therapy? And he didn't really like the sound of that. And through some serendipity and luck and fortune, we met Rizal. And two things came from that. One, my business partner is cancer-free because of on-label and off-label combination recommendations. And two, we ended up starting CureMatch. And we said, Dr. Kurzrock, have you thought of starting a company? It's amazing what you're doing, but you're one person. There's only so many patients you could see. So let's marry your domain expertise as an oncologist with our AI expertise, our clinical expertise, entrepreneurial investment, and that was the genesis of the company, literally out of the UC San Diego Moores Cancer Center and the Supercomputer Center. And again, it was truly a make lemonade out of lemons. We would not have, this company would not exist if my business partner did not get cancer.
Wow. So oncologists typically look at a cancer and they, first of all, identify it based on the organ. And I think I've heard you say that that is actually the wrong way to go about it. But also, they typically get a chemotherapy regimen of 1 to 3 drugs or whatever. How many different combinations of chemotherapy drugs are there?
So that's a great question. There are millions of combinations. So if there's roughly, let's say, 300 drugs available, there are millions of combinations. And so it's beyond human cognition to process them. And in fact, at the esteemed academic institutes across the country and across the world, MD Anderson, Memorial Sloan, Moores Cancer Center, they have what's called a tumor board that meets every Wednesday, and the oncologists sit around a table and discuss the cases together. Now, if you're a patient not at one of these academic centers, 80% of cancer patients are not going to go to one of these academic centers. Your oncologist does not have all these other oncologists and team members and colleagues and this academic machine behind funding research, right? And so that's where this really came from. Some have called this almost a virtual tumor board. But Dr. Kurzrock had said, even at these academic institutions, on the Wednesday tumor boards, she'd look around the room, and herself and her esteemed colleagues are Googling and looking up different combinations. And she's like, there's got to be something better for this, because it's beyond human cognition, even with us incredibly smart people. Again, 4.5 million combinations. That's the number. And that's just, it's not going to happen without AI.
That's right. It's amazing. Yeah, it's really the only way you could do that is with AI, for sure. And the other thing is regarding the type of cancer. I think docs typically, if you've got lung cancer, well, here's the chemotherapy regimen for lung cancer, and that's the wrong way to go about it, isn't it?
It really is. I'm glad you came back to that, because I failed to address that point. So we do tend to identify, not tend to, we do in our society, our lexicon is, this is brain cancer, this is lung, this is prostate, this is breast, liver. But really, cancer should be identified by the molecular makeup of it. And so that's where you have drugs like Merck's Keytruda, which is a fantastic drug, one of the best performing, best selling, financially, of course. The pharma companies are not doing things out of the goodness of their heart. They're there to make money as a for-profit engine. And Keytruda is one of the best selling drugs because it performs well. And it was initially meant for lung cancer. And we found back in 2016, when we first started the company, it kept popping up in reports for stomach cancer, for example. And we had oncologists tell us, I would have never thought of this, because they've been trained through all their schooling that this drug is for lung cancer and this drug is for stomach cancer. And so they never thought differently about it. And so that's where our report would, again, automatically pop up saying, consider this drug with this other drug that, yes, it's off label, but based on this patient's cancer and the molecular makeup, it's very similar to what Keytruda was meant to take care of on lung cancers.
Yeah. I want to bring back something you said earlier. It's very important that you've actually made history in a way, that your technology has won CPT approval, which means it can be, insurance will pay for it, or for part of it anyway.
So yes, no, I appreciate you mentioning that. So just like CureMetrix is the first company in history on 2 FDA clearances, the first breast cancer product and the first one detecting calcification from the same mammogram, which can, of course, be early onsets of heart disease. CureMatch is the first company in history to get a CPT code granted by the governing body that grants them, the American Medical Association, in a new category called assistive intelligence. And so it's a T code, which means it's a temporary code, but it's a start, right? And that's how all codes start. And so that means that it could be billed and it could be tracked. And ultimately, then the payers, insurance companies reimburse it, because what we're also showing is that not only are we addressing the toxicity to the patient, but we're addressing the financial toxicity, as it's being called, and money being flushed down the toilet on treatments that not only don't work, but they literally are killing the patients faster. And part of us getting that CPT code came from oncologists from all over the country sending in letters of support saying CureMatch changed my therapy decision. So in your neck of the woods in Orange County, Dr. John Link in Newport Beach, world famous breast cancer oncologist, and his testimonial is on our website, and he was one of the doctors sending a letter of support. Greg Simon, who launched the Cancer Moonshot program back in 2016 with then Vice President Biden, his endorsement, of course, helps. And so it's not just oncologists, but those from the business side and the government side. And then I'll point out Dr. Rick Landman, retired, but he was a former chief medical officer at Guardant, which is a public company, and they're a lab that does what's called the next-gen sequencing. So they have a wet lab, a physical lab that the cancer biopsy is sent to, and then using a Illumina machine or Thermo machine or Element machine, there's more and more companies that make the hardware. The labs like Guardant, and there's others, Foundation Medicine, which is owned by Roche and Caris, and there's big ones and small ones. The lab part's frankly getting commoditized, which is a good thing for all of us as prices come down. But then they'll produce the sequencing information, which is our input. And so to get an endorsement from Rick is critical there. And before I move on, this is exactly kind of the workflow that I just described, but this, picture says 1,000 words here. This is kind of the process of the sequencing being done, sent to the lab, and then that's where it comes to us, and we address that gap, where the labs only take it so far, and the known combinations represent less than 1% of the combinations. And we're the only company in history that addresses the 99% of unknown combinations. And so that's not just vaporware and slapping it on a PDF or a website. We had the clinical validity and papers and studies that, of course, all went to the AMA, and they validated all that to then grant us the CPT code.
Very good. I've got a couple questions from the audience.
Sure.
Would you envision a business model where a woman would be able to proactively pay a fee to get their mammogram analyzed, and that report would then be sent to their doctor?
So I love that question. And I think healthcare overall, we're going to get closer and closer to the patient and take out the middlemen and the costs that aren't necessary. However, we can't practice medicine legally. Like unless we change our business model. So we can have a mammogram, and we can know it's cancer. We can know that woman needs to go see a cardiologist and has calcification and needs to get on blood thinner medication attack. But we can't tell her. It has to be a practicing physician to tell her. So what we can do is partner with the brick and mortar locations, or we could have a telemedicine business ultimately where it does come to us, and then there's a doctor that can say, practicing medicine with the license to practice. Not only is it a license to practice, but a license to practice in the state the patient is in. So during COVID with telemedicine, that law was waived, or it wasn't tracked, or waiver, whatever word you want to use for it. But that's now come back. So a doctor could be in California. If a patient is in Nevada, and they don't have a license in Nevada, they cannot tell that patient what to do. They cannot practice their medicine even on a telemedicine platform. So there's a lot of rules and regulations around it, but I love that question because rationally, we all think that same thing. Like, I hear about something, I have my mammogram, I want to send it to you, and please run it on your AI on it and give me a second opinion. And so we're looking to get as close to that as possible within obviously the regulatory and legal confines of our system.
Right. When you look at a mammogram, as you know, I was on staff at Harvard in neuroradiology, and mammograms were always the holy grail of radiology. It seems like it's the most difficult to study and to diagnose. When you look at one of your mammograms and you see the arterial microcalcification, radiologists can't see that, or do they just not notice it?
Great question, Barry. So the statistic is, let me rephrase, and I'm going to share the screen again. So radiologists will say, I've seen calcification. They don't see the microcalcifications, but they can see calcification, but only 2 to 3% are reported. So it's called an incidental finding, and only 2 to 3% are reported, which is just inexcusable. So that's where we've now developed a product that does it automatically, that does it better than the human eye, and it can be on 100% of mammograms, not just the 2 to 3% that are currently being reported. I mean, this is a travesty, frankly, of women's health. And a lot of women or women generally, are kind of brushed off. And, whether you talk to loved ones that your wife, your sister, aunt, whoever, they all have stories of being brushed off by the medical field. And they could say, I've been really tired. And they're like, oh, you need more sleep, in the kids, whatever. But fatigue is a potential symptom of or indicator of heart attack in women, um, because they don't get chest pain and shortness of breath like men, and so that's why it's so important with what we did, and to build a product around it, and we have studies and papers coming out on a study with UC San Diego on 18,000 plus women, and the statistics are just mind-blowing. I
Yeah.
mean, it's incredible what, the numbers don't lie. And so that's where we're so excited to do this. And I'll point as I pull up this screen, we all build up calcification in our bodies, but if you detect it in a 70-year-old, statistically, they've lived a pretty long life. You're not going to make that much of a difference, and odds are they're already seeing a cardiologist. Where we can make the biggest impact is on younger women, middle-aged women, call it from, 40 to 55, where they don't know of any heart disease in the family. They're not a marathon runner, but they're in decent shape. And they have no idea that they're building calcification up and they're a walking heart attack. And so that's where if, the woman goes in for her mammogram at 45 and calcification is detected, and now she goes and sees a cardiologist. Now she gets on the statin, gets on the baby aspirin, gets on the blood thinner medications, anything else. And so that's where this is just so huge, is to get in front of it before the heart attack. And really, I can't emphasize it enough. Obviously, I'm biased, but the win for women's health, the win for the healthcare system to reduce costs, it's incredible.
Yeah, working with a lot of radiologists, they're not necessarily research oriented. And I have another question here. Do you believe that this will springboard medical doctors into more research, out of the box type thinking?
No, I don't.
That's too bad.
I don't, unfortunately. I think that, and I come from a family of all doctors, and that they go into that profession, and they go through all that schooling, in specialization. And I think that, they're going to do what they've been trained to do, and they then go to conferences, and at conferences you got the pharma companies and the medical device companies that are telling them about this or that, and there's a lot of rules against that now, and because there's a lot of unethical practices, right? But at the end of the day, the law is always going to be behind technology, and because of healthcare and the regulatory, structure around, and rightfully so, to a large degree, to make sure that we as a society, as people, we're not hurt by technologies and procedures and drugs that could do more harm than good. But I don't think the research is not what a doctor is meant to do unless they're in academia.
Yeah, you're right. Westcliff is opening a nursing college, and we're going to be hopefully looking at nurse practitioners. There's a huge shortage of nurses, especially after COVID.
Yeah.
Huge. So we're looking at that. Do you think that eventually nurses, or nurse practitioners in particular, will be doing a lot of this?
I do actually, and I think it's a great profession to go into, because with technologies, whether like ours or other technologies being developed, you could have a nurse practitioner or a physician's assistant do certain jobs, that then will triage the workflow. So then the specialized doctors are dealing with what they do best, right?
Yeah.
And so if a physician's assistant can use a technology to, read a EKG for, for a patient, it could then take that job or that more menial task away from the specialized doctor. And so I think that will, one, create a bunch of new, very high paying, safe jobs. And two, I think it'll help reduce the overall cost of the healthcare system because now it's, at the end of the day, a nurse practitioner is not going to make what a specialized physician is going to make, but it's going to be a win for everyone.
Yeah. You know, there's a lot of collaboration between the United States and China and a number of other countries in terms of medicine. I used to go Radiological Society of North America. It is basically like the UN.
Yeah.
Um, China doesn't have the same issues regarding privacy that we do.
No, they do
They
not.
don't have a HIPAA. So in other words, everybody's medical data is free to use for the most part. And because of that, they may make advances that we necessarily will not be able to make. Will we be able to make use of their data?
So you brought up an incredibly important point, Barry. And after healthcare, my second passion around where AI has the most important implications is national security. And at the end of the day, um, talent doesn't know borders and boundaries. Talent is all over the world, and talent also goes where it is wanted and invited, right? And so that then gets into obviously more on why are so many people going to Canada? Because Canada makes it easy for these scientists from other parts of the world to go to Toronto versus the U.S. And that's fine. Canada's our neighbor; they're our friend. They'll develop jobs there, and it's they have the rules around privacy that we have. With China, to your point, they don't have the same privacy laws. They have a mountain of data, and so one can make the argument that that puts us at a disadvantage if they can have the talent and have the data to then develop products to get to market. Now, of course, if they, at the end of the day, the North American market is the most lucrative, so they will look to come to the US. And so to come to the US, they have to get an FDA clearance, they have to get a CPT code, right? And so they'll, even if it's developed there, to come here, they still have to go through our rules and regulatory bodies. So I don't know if that answers the question the way
Well,
you want, but
no, I understand, but have you actually presented your data and your technology to China, for instance?
no, no, because they want us to house our data in their data centers, and we're not going to do that.
Got it.
So we've had to date, if they want to send, if they want to send their data to the U.S., so if mammograms from China to the U.S., we can process it and we can send it back hypothetically, but they won't do that. So they protect the privacy of their people's data in that they don't want it to leave the country,
Got it.
right? But they won't respect the privacy of the data there, like we respect the privacy of our populace with HIPAA and other rules and regulations.
Yeah, I want to ask you a legal question. Where you have AI-driven decisions, and those decisions might lead to an adverse patient outcome, who would be held accountable in that regard?
So this actually goes back to one of the earlier questions someone had put up in the chat, I think. And it comes back to that practicing medicine, right? So we are a vendor. We developed a healthcare IT product. It's the doctor that using technologies like ours and others is going, and their own knowledge is going to practice medicine. So AI is not going to replace the doctor. And they're saying is a human in the loop, on the loop, or outside the loop. Within healthcare, the human should always be on the loop as a backstop. So if a cancer is missed by an AI, the doctor is still there, right? To see it. And if a recommendation is given, the doctor is still there to say, well, that makes no sense, or let me look further into that, and let me look into the research around that. And so there are pros and cons to this, these guardrails of practicing medicine and needing a medical professional with a license in that state to do that.
Did you have any major regulatory hurdles getting through FDA?
Yes. Well, I mean, the hurdle is to get the clearance. So just to give, I don't know how much the audience might have familiarity with FDA submissions, but the submission we did in 2019 was, maybe a couple of dozen pages, if I recall. The submission we did for our CM Angio product that got cleared in the fall here in 2023, over 1,400 pages. And the cybersecurity audit alone was over 100 pages long. So it was a huge, huge hurdle. And so it speaks to the caliber of our team that, we are the first in history to have done this. Forget being a huge public company, but there are plenty of private companies with that are much bigger than us and more financed, and it just speaks to the caliber of the team we have that we're the first to have done this.
Yeah, do you think that this will alleviate the technological divide between the haves and have-nots in terms of medicine? I'm talking about internationally.
I think it'll go a good way towards that. But sadly, if you have cancer in a poor country in Africa, or in a poor country in South America or Asia, the first thing is diagnosis. Even here in North America, in Mexico, our neighbor to the south here, they have under 200 mammographers in the entire country. So even middle class to upper middle class women are not getting breast cancer diagnosis as early as they should. Forget about someone that's, in a poor community in a rural setting in the mountains somewhere. And so part of it is getting that diagnosis. The second part is, once it's done, what's next? So on the CureMatch side, CureMatch is completely useless if we don't have the next gen sequencing from a lab. So if there's no lab in Zimbabwe or Bangladesh to do the sequencing on a cancer patient, we can't help a patient there. So guess what? And I say Bangladesh, interesting enough, because even though it's a poor country, there are people that have money there, and they send their biopsies to India. And we've done work with India and patients and doctors in India where they're not from there, they're from Bangladesh, but they had the money, they paid for it. The cancer biopsy was done in India. It was sequenced there using an Illumina machine, using Foundation Medicine, and then that was sent to us.
Yeah.
And so that's a longer answer maybe, but so we're going along a good way towards bringing this, but at the end of the day, it's going to need government support and maybe governing bodies like the World Health Organization and the UN and other to help in the really, really poor areas of the world.
And for this country, I mean, it's not hugely expensive. It is expensive, but it's how much would it cost to actually do this? Talking about CureMatch.
So CureMatch, and you go on our website, we have our CureMatch.com, but the much more, call it patient friendly, is CureMatchDirect.com. And you could buy a report. The retail price is $1,500. Of course, with our partners and labs with volume-based pricing, that comes down. But any doctor, any patient can submit the the next-gen sequencing, which is literally a PDF. So that's our input. They could pay us, they could upload the NGS, and that gets to our clinical team, and then we turn that back around. So that's on the CureMatch side of how someone would access that.
What where do you see CureMatch and CureMetrix in 20 years? Let's say 10 years.
That's a really, really good question. So, you know, with my investor hat on, you know, there's a premise that, you know, everyone thinks, you know, a VC wants to hear that everything's, you know, you're not building it to sell it. You're building it to become a unicorn and go public and, you know, go the whole 9 yards. We all know that's few and far between. Odds are companies, as they mature and grow, get acquired by other companies, be they private or be they public. And so I think odds are we're not going to go public and be independent standalone companies. At some point, a consolidation happens and companies that are smaller get acquired by companies that are bigger, that have the distribution to then get it out there faster. That's not always the case, right? I mean, we put our head down and look to grow as fast as we can organically and find partners to work with. But statistically, odds are once companies like us get to a certain inflection point, a bigger fish, so to speak, would look to bring them under their tent.
This has been really great. How can people get in touch with you, Navid?
We're very accessible on the social mediums for CureMatch and CureMetrix, much more on LinkedIn if they want to follow us. But we are trying to use the you know, Facebook and Twitter and X Twitter more. So if they want to follow us there, it's please do that. To contact us, we have our information on the websites, info at for either one. And then obviously I can't field all the inbound myself, but as much as I can, if you know, someone has cancer or a loved one has cancer or they have investment interest, you know, please, you could send me a link, send me an email or a direct message on LinkedIn.
That's great. Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate your time, Navid. This is so fascinating. It's so great to actually see AI making a difference, a positive difference in people's lives.
Thank you.
I'm going to be introducing our next speaker for May. So stick around and listen, okay?
Sure thing.
Doug Shannon will be joining us next month. He's a sought-after speaker and artificial intelligence consultant for enterprise organizations and small businesses. He's going to explain how to get started in transitioning your business into what he calls intelligent automation or robotic process automation using generative AI. I want to introduce purposefulbuying.org to you. It's an e-commerce company that was built and is entirely managed by smart capstone students here at Westcliff University. The platform sells premium Nepalese products with all proceeds going to Pahar Trust, a 30-year-old charity that's building schools in many of the most remote, earthquake-prone villages in Nepal. So check out purposefulbuying.org. I want to remind everyone that on June 7th, Westcliff University is holding its commencement. We'll be streaming that on social media, so save the date. I want to thank everybody for coming today and attending this webinar. Now, everyone who is attending this webinar will receive a follow-up email with an evaluation form. Please take the time to fill that out. It helps us improve this Distinguished Innovator Speaker Series going forward. Thank you, and goodbye.